you And good morning and welcome to Bowles.tv, BOLES.TV. I'm David Bowles. Nice to see you with my Bowles.tv shirt. Yeah, it's a promo. I tell you, living in a modern world, sometimes there are some things you just can't barely stand. And one of them happens every morning right around this time, 9 a.m. Eastern. We live in a big building, big luxury building, as other people say. And this is a no-smoking building. You sign the lease, you smoke, you're out. Smoking includes vaping, cigarettes, the marijuana, all of that. And they're very serious about it. They've thrown people out of this building for smoking. They say you violated your lease, you're out, because people are allergic, people don't like the smell, it ruins the smell of the building. And then we had a COVID pandemic. And all the courts closed. And all the evictions stopped. And the courts are slowly opening, evictions are sort of coming. And in that time, both New Jersey and New York have now legalized marijuana. The pot, the Mary Jane, the weed. And I've never been a big smoker of anything in my life. But I do know that I have sort of an allergy to marijuana. At least that's what I was told when I was young, when I did an allergy test. But maybe they told all young men in the Midwest who were young, oh, be careful of that marijuana out there. You're allergic to it. It'll make you sick. But I tend to think that's probably true, because every morning at 9 a.m. in this building, somebody is toking up a storm. And it comes right through the walls, so I open up the windows, try to get rid of the smell, but it makes me sneeze and it makes me cough. First world problems, I know, but it's very annoying that these people do not care, that they are violating the terms of their lease. And the new thing is, they say if they get caught smoking the pot in their apartment, oh, I have a medical exemption. My doctor's written me a note. I can smoke all the pot I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Can't throw me out. I have a medical condition. Just like those emotional support animals you see everywhere. So what do we do? So we, the ones with the allergies, we are the ones who suffer for their indignation in smoking the pot all day and all night. And you really can't escape it. Even when you go out for a walk on the street, you walk by a big apartment house and you say, what's that smell? Oh my God, it's called stank weed for a reason. Makes you very sick. But what are you gonna do? Nobody's enforcing anything. Everybody's getting high. But as I always try to tell myself in these times, we would much rather people be smoking the pot than chilling out, than to be on crack or something, meth, ice, whatever the kids are doing today, whatever the old people are doing today in the streets that makes them wildly manic and aggressive. The pot people probably taking a nap soon after. So we have a lot of fun things to get to today. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you is we have new emotes. I'm not a big emote person. I'm not a big emoticon person. But some people are, and so we invoke them and make them available in chat. So I set up a new chat thing with 7TV. That is the name of these emotes. And if you have chat for this stream, you can see it. Now, the chat that shows up on our screen appears to filter out these new emotes. So I'm going to show them to you. These are cat emotes. And I did a search for this 7TV and these emotes that you can add to your channel. Well, one's not a cat, but I can't unclick it. Two are not chat, but I can't unclick it. And there are over 4,000 cat emotes in 7TV. I'm not going to show you that many, but I'll show you the few that I picked, just for fun to show you. And there they all are. That's what you're seeing on the screen is the name of the emote, and if you are looking at the chat screen, you can see all the cats. A lot of them are animated, very silly. Who wouldn't want a cat in your chat? We now have a lot of cats in our chat. And I believe if you click on the icons in chat, you can send a cat icon, chat, emote thing, whatever, as well, if you would like to. Not required. What else is going on in the world? Oh my. This is going to be good. Every year, we do our very best to publish the best of David Bowles blogs. So we take all the writing that I publish on bowlesblogs.com and I put it into a Kindle ebook. And we've been doing this now for 10, 12 years. And people say, why would I buy an ebook when I can get it for free on the web without any advertising? And I say, you're absolutely right. Everything that's in that book, you can get online for free without advertising. Plus, there are no images in the book. It's just plain text. It's a recording of what we published over the last year. And we use it to raise money because it costs a lot of money to publish a blog, plus the other stuff we do all year long. And we don't take any advertising from anybody. We do not ask for any sort of subscription except for here on our live stream because that costs a lot of money to live stream. You got to get a lot of equipment on Bowles.tv. But everything else, no charge. So if you want to contribute to our server charges and our bandwidth charges and our image storing charges, you can buy this book. You can click on it. We just sell at Amazon. We don't go to Google. We don't go to any other place. And I buy my own book just to make sure that everything's working and that it looks good when you download it. And it's quite lovely. You can also follow the author if you want to. I do happen to follow myself because I find myself to be a lot of fun. Usually. And this is the author page. Some of the books. I think there are over 50, 55, something like that. A lot of books there. But that's something fun you can do. Another fun thing is every year we get a Christmas gift from Maker's Mark. What is Maker's Mark? Well, is it a whiskey? Is it a bourbon? People get all upset about that. I don't know what it is. It's an alcoholic drink, but it's fun. It's a bourbon. And you can sign up and be an ambassador for Maker's Mark, which means you can put your name on a cask of their bourbon. And you're an ambassador is what they call you, and you can probably what I'm doing right now, talking to you about Maker's Mark. I'm doing my ambassador work. And they send you news and updates. This is what Maker's Mark looks like. It's the bourbon that's dipped in wax, hand dipped in wax, and it's nice. I like it. Not a big drinker, but when I do, it's okay. And here's the fun part. You can start your own barrel journey. Now, I've already done mine, but I'll show you what it looks like. You can go here, type your name. Oh, you can't have a period. So we'll just say Bowles TV. That's our name. And then you can continue on, and then your name gets put on a special plaque on the casket with other names. And when that casket is ready to be swallowed by people so they can have some alcohol, you get first dibs on your barrel, along with all the other people on your barrel. And it takes like 7 to 10 to 12 years for your barrel to mature. So you sign up and you're waiting and you're waiting and waiting. They give you updates and you're waiting and you're waiting. Sometimes they send you photographs of your barrel sitting there and you're waiting and you're waiting. And they seem to now know that when people are waiting, they're waiting. And they're waiting for something that's going to take a long time to get there. So what do they do? What does Maker's Mark do? They're very smart. Every year they send you a little gift. I think one year it was socks. I think last year it was sort of a stained glass ornament that said Maker's Mark that you could hang on your Christmas tree. They're very well thought out. And they're not cheap gifts. And this is what we got this year. Just arrived the other day. A Maker's Mark puzzle. Now, how fun is that? Who wouldn't want to get together with your family and put together a puzzle from Maker's Mark? It's just delightful. As you can see, we have not opened this yet. We have not put the puzzle together. We don't even know what the puzzle says. But we are an ambassador. It's the little things in life that make it worthwhile. We're still waiting for notification that we can purchase our Maker's Mark bottles, and it hasn't happened yet. So yesterday I asked for some feedback. I said if you have any ideas for the stream, if you want something covered that I haven't talked about before, hit me up, let me know. So our friend Dora said, hey, why don't you talk about VHS? VHS. She said, yeah, she has 2 VHS recorders and movies that she loves on VHS, and she doesn't know what to do with them. Well, now that is a very interesting problem, because VHS, as we unfortunately know, if we are the age of 50 and above, VHS has sort of gone the way of the CD player and the cassette tape and the 8-track tape recorder. All technology becomes obsolete at some time. I remember 30 years ago, living in Greenwich Village, went into a record store when they still had record stores, and way in the back, some guys had rented a room, and they were selling, in that back room, at discounted prices, DAT machines. Digital audio recording machines on little tiny cassettes that gave you great sound. And that was the new hot way to record music or yourself on these little machines. But you had to have a DAT recorder, and you had to have a DAT player, and then you had to have the right speakers and the right headphones to hear what the DAT was recording. And these DAT machines that could record, and they were big, discounted, were running like $1,200. Which back then, 30 years ago, fresh out of school, New York City living and New York City rent, impossible prices. Very, 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 very high. So I would go in there a couple of times and look and see if anything else was on sale. They had little tiny portable DAT recorders that you could use to listen back, but the quality wasn't as good. Those were $800. Absolutely impossible. And then I could tell they were kind of getting tired that I would, go back there and look around and not buy anything, so I stopped going. And I never bought a DAT machine because I finally realized it's really just a fancy cassette player, and cassettes were done by that time. CDs were big back then. Vinyl was sort of still around. Vinyl's trying to make a comeback, although people don't really care. Most people. Although Fender, let me see if I can find that. It just reminded me of something. Well, here we go. This popped up in my email the other day, where Fender is saying, hey, remember that precision turntable we told you about? It's sold out, but now it's back in stock. So this is a turntable that Fender, the guitar maker, the amp maker, is selling, which is really very smart, because there are elitists who only love the sound of vinyl and Bluetooth, and CDs and streaming can't match the sound of a record player. So I respect that. I have friends who only love vinyl. Fine. So they had this player, this precision deck turntable from Fender, out of stock, sold out right away. Now they've restocked it just in time for Christmas. Who would know? And did you see the price? It flashed by a little too quickly. My mouse is very sensitive today. Just like me. $3,000 $495 for the Fender vinyl turntable. Now, Fender makes guitars and people buy them every day. Regular guitars, $10,000 from the custom shop. But if you're going to buy a Fender guitar, buy a custom shop guitar. They're handmade, really handmade by specific artists, and they are pieces of art. I have some artwork back there, Gibson's. I have Fenders too. So, $3,500 for a turntable. So turntables, is that old technology? Is that outdated? Yes, but it's sort of making a comeback. And here are all the details about you get an ultra tone arm for $3,500. You get an isolated AC synchronous motor. None of this means anything to me because I was never really into turntables. I like CDs. I'm the CD generation. But audiophiles do not like people who like CDs because it's an inferior product with an inferior sound. Which I accept because I am an inferior person. And the Darlin platter, stainless steel inverted bearing, well-damped billet aluminum body, micro-line diamond stylus, and those are not even the features. Here are the features. So there you go. Don't miss out. $3,500 is waiting for you to spend on your new turntable. So then, I started thinking about other technologies, and it's always a problem. Teaching at universities, you used to always have access. Snap your fingers, make a request. Not snap your fingers, but in an instant, you could request a DVD player, a document viewer for your classroom to show kids a movie or an ebook or something like that. And in the last 5 years, all that's changed. Dora's here. Hello, Dora. I can't stand the smell too. It gives me a headache. Ugh, it is. It's everywhere. And there's nothing we can do about it. This is a tough luck, old person. You're going to have to deal with the new reality of having pot in your face. And in our building, you can't even vape. Vape is considered a violation because it's whatever. It's not smoke, but it's steam. But they can't do anything about that either. So these universities won't give you technical information anymore. Technical support. Because they say, oh, it's old technology. And you say, what do I do with my VHS tapes? Because people our age have VHS tapes of family recordings or movies, CDs, DVDs. What do we do with all this? And these universities say, bring it to our media center, technology center, IT center, and we'll transfer it for you. We'll make an MP4 file. We'll make something out of it that you can stream it from our website, which is great. I'm not sure how that's not a copyright violation. But they seem to have worked it out where they're not too worried about it. They say, bring it in. It's your personal copy. You're just changing the format in which you're storing it. And while we are assisting you, there's some kind of something that says that they can. And then we transform it and we don't have to support you anymore. Then we just have a computer in your classroom that you log into, and then you just stream stuff. And we don't have to do anything except worry about the stream quality. We don't have to come in your class or bring you equipment. You're on your own. It's just called a smart classroom. You just stand at a podium and you do your thing. So that's okay, but not great. So the question is, what do you do with all this old equipment you have? And it is an issue, and I'll show you another issue that we discussed maybe a couple of weeks ago. Let me see if I can find it here. That we discussed a couple of weeks ago. And that was this. Oh, my mouse is just very active today. I scroll one way, it goes the other. Now we're not going to watch this, but this is the Stiff Competition Heartbreaker, the Pat Benatar song that I introduced 30 years ago. Well, I got into a conversation with Will Saws, who was the drummer for the band. And he talks about me, the teenage movie critic, Okay, fun stuff. So I asked him, I said, look, there are a couple of things that I don't have. I don't have me, excuse me, it's the pot. Not my pot, the neighbor's pot. The Mary Jane. Going right to my throat. Oh, I'll have Jen Marie to the rescue. Thank you, my love. Water only. Not Maker's Mark. And I said, do you, I'm looking for video from my kidding around days, and I'm looking for some kind of audio recording of my Unique Youth Radio show. And people my age and Lincoln, I asked them, because some people do just record things on the radio, they save it forever, and you're not going to find out if they have it if you don't ask. And Will said, no, we don't have anything like that. I said, is there a video recording of that concert that you did? Because I would love to see if there's any video that we could use. He said, no, there wasn't any video. So I'll share part of our conversation we had, which is really very interesting and on topic for today. So this is what Will said when I asked him about the video. He said, I do have some pictures and posters of the Playmore gig around here somewhere, but no video, of course. Now, I don't want to, he said, of course, because there was video back then. They could have videoed it if they wanted to, but maybe they didn't feel like it. The entire Playmore show was captured on quality audio, thanks to a guy that brought his multi-track system out there. But I taped over the cassette copy I had, not long after, with some Devo, which is a band, or B-52s, which is a band, playing on KFMQ. And we've talked about KFMQ last week. By the way, my older brother Jeff drew the Stiff Competition poster, lifted, of course, from the Clash album, popular at that time. And this is what I said 2 weeks ago. KFMQ was fantastic in its day. I guess album-oriented rock is dead. Now everything is talk. It's too bad you recorded over the live performance. When Gillette Broadcasting bought Channel 10, they destroyed all the archived videotapes of the shows, including my show, Kidding Around, that he talks about. No vision about the future. All the Kidding Around shows were put in a landfill somewhere and bulldozed over, is what I understand. And that includes Cartoon Corral, Romper Room, News Broadcast, The Morning Show. All those were local shows that they don't do local shows like that anymore. And they were all saved and duly archived, only to be destroyed later by new management. And Lita Powell-Drake, who I've also discussed here, was crushed that all of her 30 years of work ruined for no reason other than Gillette Broadcasting not wanting to pay for the storage of the tapes. And luckily, she had tapes of all of her celebrity interviews she saved, and then she's had them published through the Nebraska Historical Society on YouTube so you can go watch them. So she has a whole new career. But all of that documentation of the daily lives of Nebraskans, archival history of what happened each day, lost forever. And archival malice is what I call it. It's just hard to consider. And I do love his poster. Dora says, I was having trouble texting you, but just restarted. Wow, such a shame about the tapes. Yeah, it's really terrible. So what are you gonna? In my life, I have works that I've done on videotape. That's old VHS copy, the Westboro Crusaders that I showed you live here. Recorded, I think, on maybe 3/4-inch tape, and then down. My copy was on VHS. And VHS tapes tend to disintegrate if you don't catch them in time. As well as cassettes and reel-to-reel tape. You know, you buy the best, most expensive stuff, get the black tape. That's what the mantra was 30 years ago. Don't get the greasy, light brown tape. Get the hardcore metal oxide black tape. So I always tried to, even though it was about 4 times more expensive. And find a way to preserve what you have. And the Watershed movie I also showed here, we shot that at 16 millimeter. Well, who has a 16 millimeter film projector? Greg Kubitschek in Lincoln, Nebraska does, but nobody else in the world does. Super 8, that was big too. A lot of movies were made on Super 8. Well, now you just use your iPhone camera and use the Super 8 filter and make a Super 8 film. So how do you get your movie off of a 16 millimeter film and onto digital that you can upload to Vimeo and play on your live stream 10 years later? And even if I had the kidding around stuff, I had a couple of reels that were given to me by the director, Mike Buss, and they were 2-inch reel-to-reel videotapes. Huge. And even if I had that, and I did have it at one time, even if I had those in my possession, there's nowhere that I can find in New York City that I would be able to run that tape and make a local copy. Somebody said maybe go to the History of the Museum of Broadcasting, and maybe they have the old equipment and they would fire it up for you and put on your thing and see if they could make a copy for you. And I would do that if I still had the tape, but I don't know where it is. So what do? You have all your VHS stuff, you have all your equipment. The equipment might work, the equipment might not work. Well, there are places you can go, especially in New York City, where they mainly focus on family photographs, slides. Do you remember the slideshow? Someone would go on vacation, you go over to their house and they'd show you the slides of their vacation for 3 hours. And people want that digitized so they can look at it and save it and use it for later. And I found a place several years ago, and they're still in business, and I'm highly recommending them. So let me find them for you. They are called Digify. DIJIFI.com. And they took all of my radio air check broadcasts and digitized them. They were on reel-to-reel. I just put everything in a box and sent it to them. I sent them VHS copies of Westboro Crusaders. They fixed it up, sent me a digital copy. I sent them the 16 millimeter answer print for Watershed. They converted it for me into a digital copy. They're wonderful people. They have all the professional equipment. They saved it. They are their own museum of broadcasting because they have all the equipment to run your stuff. So they scan photos, slides, negatives, other formats, photo prints, service options. I encourage you to check them out, digify.com, if you need help. They will do a wonderful job. And with that, my friend, it is time for a blood pressure break. I will be back momentarily. Thank you for being here. We are back. David Bowles live. Thank you for being with me today. BOLES.TV. And speaking of marijuana, this process that I'm going through is called hotboxing. Just so we can be on the record with this. Do you know what hotboxing is? Usually it's where kids get together in a small room. They close the windows. They all have bongs or blunts or whatever. And they all smoke, and the whole room becomes filled with the pot smoke. And just being in the room, you get a contact high, even though you're not actively smoking. That's hotboxing. And it's bad. Hotboxing is bad because it affects pets who can't get out. They're stuck in the room breathing all that junk. And children and infants and babies and other pets. But that's what's happening here. I open my windows and the smell comes in through the window. I close my windows, the smell comes through the wall of this marijuana. So we're being hotboxed. So I have lightly mentioned this to the front desk. They come up, they smell, oh yeah, that's marijuana. I said, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, we don't know exactly where it's coming from. It could be coming from above, it could be coming from below, it could be coming from your neighbor next door. I said, well, smoke rises. So I don't think it's the people above me. It could definitely be people below me, but I really think it's my next door neighbor. Well, we can't be sure. We can't accuse someone. We can't falsely accuse someone unless we know for sure. I said, well, how are you going to know for sure? Well, we'd have to catch them in the act. We're going to knock on their door. Well, they won't answer because if they're smoking the pot, they're not going to answer. I said, well, can you violate their lease? Well, why don't you just talk to them? Send them a note. See what they say. I said, why am I talking to them? You talk to them. I can't violate them out of their lease, but you can. Well, we don't know what we're going to do about this. We're going to take it under advisement. We'll let you know. That was a year ago, so nothing's changed. It's worse. And speaking of worse, there's a big change in the movies. And I read this last night. That West Side Story, the big multi-million-dollar Steven Spielberg, Stephen Sondheim musical version of West Side Story is a magnificent flop. And who couldn't have predicted that before this whole thing even started? People are not really interested in these movie musicals anymore. There was a time, especially in the 50s, where people loved the movie musical. And unfortunately, or fortunately, many Broadway shows, musical shows today, begin their lives in the movies. People take a movie and make it into a musical. They rarely make a musical and then make it into a movie. And every once in a while you get something that's actually interesting and original. That's a musical on Broadway that isn't based on a book or a movie. It's just such a lack of vision and integrity in the creation process. But Stephen Sondheim died right before the opening of the musical version of West Side Story. Died at 91. And I thought, well, that'll give a little kick to the show. And it looked like it kicked him right in the face. West Side Story opened over the weekend, only in theaters, with $10.5 million domestically. And $4.4 million in international markets. Terrible. With a $100 million production budget before marketing costs, which probably added $25 million more to that. It's a disappointing figure for Disney, which inherited the movie in its acquisition of the Fox Film Studio in 2019. It could still have legs through the holidays and awards season, but it has an uphill battle. It's dead. It's not going anywhere. Which is unfortunate because I haven't seen it because I'm old and I don't go to theaters anymore. But some of the reviews have been very good. Dora says, why do a remake? I love Moulin Rouge and I love... Well, that is a fantastic question. Why remake West Side Story? Because you can? Now, revivals on Broadway, I sort of understand. Producers want to make money. They want to take a proven show that people like. put in a whole new cast, run it again. I don't like revivals, but I understand them. But a movie that is perfect, with Natalie Wood, Rita Moreno, and then you decide to remake it 50 years later just because you feel like it for $100 million? It's just a little bit ridiculous to me. I don't quite understand it. And so this article goes on to say it follows other musicals and adult dramas that have underwhelmed at the box office this year as the theatrical industry strives to recover from the pandemic. And here are the other failures. House of Gucci with the Lady Gaga, 14 mil opening weekend. Disaster. Absolute disaster. In the Heights, the musical adaptation of Lin-Manuel Miranda's Broadway musical, 11.5 mil. Disaster. It also appeared on HBO Max. Dear Evan Hansen, another Broadway musical made into a movie, 7.4 million. Disaster. King Richard, 5.4 million. I think that's the tennis movie, right? About the Williams sisters, about their father. 5.4 million opening, also on HBO Max. That was terrible. The Last Duel, which I believe is the other Ridley Scott disaster, 4.7 million. He also directed House of Gucci. And the feeling is, the sense of all this is as well, it's because old people over the age of 50 are not going to the movies anymore. They don't want the COVID. So, stream it, put it on HBO Max, put it on TV. No, there's no money in that. We're going to lose all our money we put on the TV. And nobody's going to pay $19 to stream West Side Story on video on demand. Not going to happen. But if you put it on Disney Plus, say, hey, come and watch it, people will probably watch it. But you're not going to make $100 million off of putting West Side Story on Disney Plus without charging an extra fee. And that does take a lot of gall. I think Disney's done that in the past, where you pay for Disney Plus, and then they have special exclusives where you pay more to get access. So, my feeling of the days of the movie musical are probably not coming back. I mean, if Steven Spielberg, Tony Kushner, Stephen Sondheim, and that cast cannot make West Side Story into something to watch that people want to see and pay money to see, well, who else is out there? And I was thinking, before we started the stream today, I could only think of two movie musicals that made a lot of money and that changed the whole conversation culturally. One of them is Fame. Made Irene Cara a superstar for a little while. Became a TV show. Huge success. School of the Arts, Performer School of the Arts in New York City. Big thing. And the other mega smash, which is the mega smash of all mega smashes, the Alan Carr version of Grease. John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John, massive cultural shift of a movie musical that had songs that people wanted to sing and a story that people wanted to be a part of. But after those two, in recent memory, the past 20 years, I can't think of any other movie musical that has had the same kind of interest and effect. And maybe my memory is going, I don't know. I have been inhaling a lot of pot smoke from contact highs lately. I am being hotboxed out of my apartment. But we already talked about that. So let's move on to the next cool idea that's going on in the news. This was fascinating to me. Not many people know that the Department of Defense gets a lot of money from the government. They give millions and billions of dollars to the military. And often the military doesn't even ask for all of that money. Congress just says, have more. Even though you didn't request it, we're giving you more. And so they sink a lot of money into research. And what are they researching? Well, usually it's how to kill people. Sometimes it's how not to kill people. And a lot of people don't know that a lot of that military money goes right into our public institutions, like universities and schools and colleges. So they can, because that's where the smart people are, and they can work for the university, look beautiful, while getting all this military money to help kill and destroy people. And there was an announcement yesterday from Rutgers that they have this new deal with the Department of Homeland Security to protect us. That was really kind of fascinating. But remember, protection goes two ways. As I always says, it depends on what side of the bomb you're on. If you're sending the bomb this way, you're the hero. If the bomb is coming at you, you're terrified. So they're saying, oh, well, this is to protect Americans. But maybe this is also how to figure out our enemies and how to thwart their protection of their people. So you have to read these things two different ways. So Rutgers is developing and have been working on crowd safety solutions, is what they call it, to combat targeted attacks, taking security issues as human trafficking, airport security, and plans to secure major transit hubs, sports stadiums, and other venues nationwide. Now, we've seen this kind of performance theater before, especially at airports where you take off your shoes for whatever reason. And you get patted down and they ask you questions, and it's all theater. Because everybody knows if you're sort of halfway smart, you can defeat the system rather easily and do harm if you were so intentioned. And I don't have any idea how to do it because I would never want to do that. But you know, people are dedicating all of their time to figuring out how to hurt other people. So here was the interesting part. Rutgers is helping the Coast Guard trap hoax callers. The Coast Guard is getting hoax calls. Very interesting. I don't know if that's swatting, where people make up things about their neighbors and have the SWAT come over and shoot them because they're holding a hostage when they're not. Developing new procedures for container inspection at ports in collaboration with U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So that's very interesting. Rutgers is helping Customs look into shipping boxes. Preparing crowd simulations to evacuate the world's busiest bus terminal at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Now, I would love to see how that would happen. It must have to do with infrastructure because people are not going to listen. So I don't know if that means creating passageways, more exits. Because if an event happens and people are screaming at the Port Authority, I don't know how you can structurally move them out of the building without directing them, without them knowing they're being directed, because no one's going to listen. Everyone's going to turn around and run. And addressing key supply chain challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the past decade, our work has led me behind the scenes to some of America's most iconic sports venues, such as Yankee Stadium. We have developed new approaches to security that safeguard the millions of Americans who flock to our major stadiums, arenas, and transportation hubs. And there was a movie about that, right? About bombing the Super Bowl Black Sunday. Was that what it was? I'm not sure if we've done anything to fix that. One of the Batman movies, the one with Bane in it, was an attack on a football game, right? They're vulnerable places, especially with these stupid drones where you just can be a mile away and put something on a drone and fly it into the middle of a stadium and do something terrible. I don't know how you defeat that, but I guess Rutgers is thinking about it. Hundreds of thousands of soft targets. Soft targets are people. Hundreds of thousands of soft targets in crowded places, such as schools, places of worship, and subway stations are still in need of action plans. Okay. We're delighted to have a new opportunity to work with DHS to extend our ideas to protect these locations. Well, I say good luck with that. And I really do mean good luck with that, because we have a lot of school shootings. This is the anniversary of Sandy Hook, where 19 kindergarten children were shot dead. And some really nasty people later said it's all hoax. Oh, well, the children are alive. The parents did not lose their tiny babies. So I guess help is coming from Rutgers and Subway to try to lead us out of this terrible mess. And before we take our next break, here's a very interesting story about how to get along at work. What do you say? And they talk about two different ways of getting along in a group. One is the challenging voice, where, the person in the group says, hey, wait a minute, I don't like that idea. What about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? What about this? What about... You know those people. I try not to be that. I'm very quiet in groups. People ask me a question in a group that I answer, but I don't really volunteer. And then there is, in this idea, the supportive voice. Oh, I like that idea. Oh, isn't that interesting? What if we tried something like this? Would you consider that? Oh my, I'm supportive. Challenging voices pushes back against the status quo and offers ideas for improvement. While it has some downsides, such as perceived criticism or conflict, challenge voice tends to signal an employee's competence or expertise. Managers, especially in dynamic and fast-paced industries, often value this communication behavior as something that can help teams complete tasks efficiently and effectively. Fair enough. Supportive voice is still about speaking up in the workplace, but it's looking at what's going well in the group or team. It might defend the status quo by saying there's value in what the team is already doing. Supportive voice signals someone's approachability and trustworthiness. It fosters strong interpersonal relationships, which affects a team's ability to communicate and coordinate efforts to reach goals. The results were surprising. Because challenging voice is the predominant form of speaking up, we encourage in classrooms and as managers, we thought it was going to be a strong driver of people selecting team members later. But as it turns out, the more supportive voice that helps establish relationships and a sense of trust among individuals in the group are more important. Researchers pointed out that having both types of voice would be ideal. But between the two, supportive voice was a stronger driver of team formation. Now, I find that really very interesting. And I wonder if things have changed. Well, things have changed, obviously. But is that a good thing? Of course, people in a group want other people in a group saying, well, isn't that wonderful? I support everything you just said. Of course they're going to respond to that. Oh, isn't that great? We all love each other. We all get along. We all support each other. And then you have the guy, that girl, that woman, that man, over in the corner saying, wait a minute. Hang on a second. We don't have to do it that way. We might want to do it this way. Oh, you're being critical. No, that's not supportive. That's a critical voice. We don't want to hear anything about that. Now, remember that Beatles documentary we watched? Loved every minute of it. I want to watch all 80 hours. And people talked about the dynamic of the Beatles. John was indifferent and gone. Paul was desperate, trying to keep everything together and write 14 songs. Ringo was just there, doing what he had to do. And George was not the supportive voice, which he had been in the past. He was the critical voice. He was the voice over in the corner saying, I'm not sure that's going to work. I think we should do it this way. The song has to resolve. And you could see how George Harrison, by being that antithesis, but still being part of a group, even though he left and quit and came back, he made the group better because he had wonderful ideas that were fresh and new. And this new research says that George Harrison is not the kind of person we want in our group. We would like to replace him with another Ringo Starr who just sits there and is very competent and plays beautiful drums, but he doesn't speak up and he doesn't say anything. He's just supportive. The paper's findings could help employees realize the way they speak up can have a strong effect on informal teaming up at a later point and help them move into leadership roles. Now, isn't that interesting? A leadership role is now, today, defined as someone who doesn't disagree, someone who does not offer new ideas, but someone who is just supportive and says nothing. As for managers, Chamberlain said the results could encourage them to foster and provide space for more supportive voices by coaching this type of behavior and rewarding employees who speak up supportively. Now, as much as we don't probably want to discuss it, who do you think is the biggest promoter of a supportive voice recently? Think politics. Think presidential, or perhaps non-presidential. I believe if you were in the Trump administration, you were not to be a critical voice. You were to be a supportive voice. And if you went along and you got along and you were supportive and you were part of the team and you were not critical, then you moved up and you were promoted and supported. And we now see that idea infecting, many say, the GOP. Don't criticize each other. Be supportive. Get in line. Follow the leader. The Pied Piper of Hamelin is right before you. And he can put the rats in the river or he can put your children in the river. Which do you want? Well, it's not really a choice. Yeah, right, I know, but which do you want? Do you want your children to drown or do you want all the rats to drown? Be supportive or you're going to find out. And on that lovely positive note, it's time for another blood pressure break. Back in a moment. We are back from break. David Bowles, live here on Bowles.tv every weekday, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Lovely to see you here. Thank you very much for joining us. Oh, my legs are going crazy today. I had leg day yesterday, went for a big power walk where I really force all of my leg muscles and my glute muscles to fire, and now I have hip pain. Very stupid. And on the break, I was thinking, there were a couple of other movies that aren't necessarily movie musicals, but that were movies with a lot of music in them that were very, very successful, changed the scene, changed the conversation, changed the dialogue, changed our culture. And, like Grease, they both star John Travolta. And kids today have no idea what a massive talent John Travolta is and was. He could dance, he could sing. Urban Cowboy, one of them. Deborah Winger made her a superstar. Took place in a honky-tonk. Everyone learned to ride a mechanical bull. So you had a lot of music from Mickey Gilley all over the place. Stand By Me. It was a wonderful, wonderful movie that had a lot of music in it. And the other one, of course, John Travolta's Saturday Night Fever. Bee Gees music everywhere. A young man who dances his way out of poverty to become somebody. Big, big movies. And they really haven't been matched in their popularity. And certainly not by the movie musical, which are sort of just dreadful when you think about them, and how they have not been executed very well. Well, now we go back to our next, another interesting topic. Saturday Night Fever, Dora. Yes. Beautiful music. Made the Bee Gees bigger stars than they already were. They were a big, successful boy band in the UK, and then they released that album, and their lives never been the same. And Travolta is just magnificent in that movie. Unbeatable. A real superstar. So, research at universities is always very interesting. They try to find out topics that they can bring definition to. And one of them is masks. Because in this COVID pandemic, everyone's wearing a mask. And we've seen people stealing, robbing pharmacies, going in there, taking stuff, running out, they all have a mask on. People are protesting and they have masks on. Oh, it's for COVID. I'm not hiding my identity. And some researchers got together and said, well, what about what's going on in court? Because we have court now, and it's not just via Zoom. We're all in person now. And people have to testify in open court. And people are wearing masks. How does that affect how we view them? Can we tell? Can we judge someone as a juror? Or as a judge, can we see if they're telling us the truth or not, if they're wearing a mask? It's a very interesting topic for study. And beyond that, beyond COVID, there are certain religions that require, mainly women, probably exclusively women, to cover their face. And some of them have head coverings and mouth coverings. All you see is their eyes. Well, what would you do with a person like that in court? And they're testifying to a murder. How do you judge their authenticity if they're telling the truth or not? All you can see are their eyes. You can't see the rest of their face. So there's been a new paper that's published. A paper published in the Journal of Applied Research in Memory and Cognition reviewed hundreds of studies on deception, concluding that face masks do not hamper a jury's decision-making. That I also found fascinating. I thought it would not be true that would be true. Researchers found that facial expressions and other forms of nonverbal behavior are an unreliable indicator of deceit. And masking these actions actually improves a jury's ability to differentiate between truth and lies. Wow. At many universities, students are required to be vaccinated, and, depending on the university, they are required to wear masks in all school buildings. So let's say you're teaching American Sign Language, and facial expression is a major part of that communication dyad. And you can't see half of the other person's face, even if they're wearing a clear mask, you can't see them. What do? Well, you try to deal with it, and they have been dealing with it, but it's not perfect. And this is not a courtroom. And sometimes you have to see the shape of the mouth in order to understand what's being signed, because it's a visual cue. So for ASL class, this doesn't really apply. But I guess in a murder case in the courthouse, it's doable. The professor analyzed a collection of studies that explored how well observers were able to detect deceit using nonverbal behaviors, and found only half of the lies told were correctly identified, a result within the margin of chance rather than lie detection accuracy. Dora can't believe it either. I do find it very hard to believe. They must be looking either at eye expression or tone of voice. That's the only other thing I can think of. Because there's something when people are lying, they look one way. When they're trying to remember something, they look the other way. And tone of voice is very interesting. I remember, and this is sort of it, I remember when William Kennedy was on trial for rape, and his accuser appeared in open court. And it was televised, and she did not want her face to be shown. William Kennedy Smith, I believe was his name. And so the court ordered that her face be blotted out with a blue dot, great big giant blue dot, while she was testifying. And I watched it. And her face was covered with a blue dot, and she was testifying. She was crying and telling about the rape and what happened and being cross-examined and asked questions. And you thought, oh my gosh, this woman has suffered. She is in pain. This is just terrible. And then he was, I guess, found not guilty, or case was dismissed. And then the woman decided, because I guess she wasn't believed or her case didn't work, because the jury could see her face. We at home, the television viewing audience, could not see her. And she gave a courthouse interview with somebody. And she kind of, retold the story, started crying, same thing that we had heard and watched her perform under a blue dot. But being able to see her face changed everything. She sort of had what I'm describing as crazy eyes. She was crying without having any tears, which is fine. Some people cry that way, but it really felt like a performance. You really got the sense that she was not telling the exact and honest truth. And in court, the jury saw right through her. And the rest of us in television land have a very different perception, because we could not see her face. We're just relying basically on the sound of her voice, which was very convincing. And I even went back and replayed that courthouse interview where the blue dot was removed from her face and just closed my eyes and listened to her retell her story. And she was absolutely just as convincing as she was with the blue dot. But giving us the whole person in person can change perception. The researchers realized that while some behaviors, such as demeanor and facial expression, can be perceived as more suspicious than others, liars know that. And liars can easily mask lies using behaviors and gestures that make them appear genuine. Wow. One study directly explored the role of facial coverings in court proceedings, which found that depriving a jury of nonverbal behaviors was beneficial. The study examined how nijabs, I thought they were hijabs, but they're nijabs. I looked that up for you, just because I knew we were going to get to it. This is what it looks like. So this is the face covering we were talking about. So that's what they're talking about in this, the hijabs, the nijabs. This is what it is. This is what they look like. The study examined how the nijabs impact ability to detect deception, finding that observers were much better able to identify a lie when targets or defendants were wearing these nijabs than when they were not. You can only see their eyes. By taking away the distraction of nonverbal behaviors, observers had to rely on speech content, which turned out to be better for detecting lies. Which is just the opposite of my experience in the William Kennedy Smith trial. Her voice was very convincing. Seeing her voice with her face was not convincing. The accuser of William Kennedy Smith. Mask mandates are not the only precaution taken to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the courtroom. With some proceedings being held virtually, from a variety of studies that question how deception could be detected in person or via recording, researchers concluded that there is no evidence to suggest that virtual courtrooms are a cause for concern, with deceit detection accurately remaining at similar levels in both settings. Well, I find the whole topic just absolutely fascinating. I don't know how we get there from here. And there is, I think, one more thing I wanted to show you on this topic about lying. Let me see if I can find it. Yes, this is the actual, I found it. This is the actual study on the masks. And the conclusion, the main conclusion emerging from our review of hundreds of studies, let me make this bigger for you. The main conclusion emerging from our review of hundreds of studies of deception is that mask wearing is largely a moot issue. The face is not a reliable source of information. Therefore, depriving observers of parts of the face ought not to hamper them when detecting deceit. It may actually benefit them if it means they will focus on speech content instead. We have also discussed the consequences of another measure to carry out justice proceedings during a pandemic, which is the use of a virtual modality. Based on our review of the literature, we believe the evidence suggests that mask wearing should not impair jurors' ability to detect deception. Now, I can guarantee you that there are judges in courtrooms who will not and will never believe that. But it's right here. In some ways, we deliver good news. It does not seem that the measures to counter the spread of the COVID-19 virus or any other virus that spreads in similar ways will negatively impact observers. In other ways, we draw attention to fundamentally problematic aspects of lie detection In particular, the fact that nonverbal behavior is not helpful. It may be that the future lies in exploring the possibility of translating science-based interviewing and interrogation protocols to the courtroom, setting to aid fact-finders in the pursuit of the truth. Well, that's what they're going to obviously do next, because they're telling you right now. And that is just slightly frightening, because to me, that means something like a lie detector test. Science-based interviewing and interrogation protocols. Now, people can beat a lie detector. They pretend to tell the truth, but they're not telling the truth. It's a big danger. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's very interesting to try to figure out where we're going. And now we're going to step into this next little bit of a sticky wicket that goes to face coverings and detecting lying and this great power that many social media companies have and countries have, where they can censor what's going on. You can't say anything negative, really, about China on a public network and expect to get a proper result. Oh, I see Dora asked me a question. Did you believe he was innocent or guilty? Oh, that's William Kennedy Smith. That's very interesting. I always got the guilty vibe from him. He seemed very privileged. He seemed very cocky. And then you had this woman that we got to know later, and she just didn't quite seem to be as believable. So did he get away with it? I don't know. I remember not feeling very satisfied when he got off. It was very messy. I thought for sure it was a slam dunk that he was gone and done because of his name, the Kennedy name that family he was born into, which was a detriment. But the jury obviously saw something that we couldn't see, and they made their decision that way. So this is an interesting PR story about social media getting shut down in 17 countries, and it affects 250 million people worldwide. And it's unfortunate because those countries, which are run by authoritarians, have a hard time accessing the truth of what we need to know and what's really going on in the world. Even though the censorship numbers were lower in 2021, they followed a similar trend to last year. The shutdowns of social media, targeted apps like WhatsApp, Skype, Facebook, Messenger, Viber, and platforms such as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Moreover, the vast majority of social media shutdown cases were politically related. 7 cases affected countries suffering from protests. Oh, Dora. Well, that's an interesting question, Dora. Wasn't William Kennedy Smith in jail, though? I thought he was found guilty on subsequent trial, unless I'm mistaken. I don't remember. Let me see if we can find something. We'll go to the Wikipedia. This is what he looks like. Very charming. He was super charming in court. He's an American physician and member of the Kennedy family who founded an organization focused on landmines and rehabilitation of landmine victims. He is known for being charged with rape in a nationally publicized trial that ended with his acquittal. So I guess that's it. Legal accusations. He had a civil action. 2004. He denied the charges, calling them outrageous. And those charges were settled amicably. Which I think means money exchanged hands. But who knows? It looks like he's dedicated his life to doing better things. I think I'm mixing him up with another Kennedy, sorry. Well, if you remember which Kennedy it is, let us know. It's a very interesting family. Rose Kennedy is a whole other story. Oh boy. You got to feel for her. Yeah, that was 1991, I remember. All over the news. Thank you, Dora. So social media shutdowns happened in Burkina Faso, South Sudan, Senegal, Iran, Russia, Cuba, and Colombia. Interesting, right? 4 cases affected countries during the presidential elections: the Congo, Uganda, Zambia, and Russia. The remaining 8 cases of social media shutdown occurred during the general political turmoil in Chad, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Sudan, Armenia, Bangladesh, Iran, and Myanmar. And what it means is these social networks were just shut down. Incidents crippled communication for millions of people in times of political distress. During a global pandemic, 250 million people were affected during the blocking of those media outlets. And what's really interesting is Africa is now the leading censorship-intensive continent across the globe, responsible for half of the cases in 2021. Its shutdowns were also the most politically heavy. Now, who would have thought of that? The emerging nation of Africa is trying to shut down free speech and the ongoing acquisition of the truth. And now this is for the next part of this. It's going to be a little bit longer, so we're going to take a little bit of a break. A blood pressure break. Back in a moment to finish this thought. And we're back. Bowles.tv, BOLES.tv. I'm David Bowles. I'm so happy you're here with us today. Now we're going to continue our conversation about censorship and social media and how Africa is the #1 social media censor over the last year. However, just to be fair, we know that in America, we've had a lot of censorship here. We pretend to be free. Freedom of speech. One of my favorite political cartoons, memes, if you will, that I saw the other day, said, in America today, freedom means going to Applebee's with your machine gun and not having the vaccine so you could spread COVID to anyone you wanted to. That's what freedom in America means today. Sort of funny, pretty much true. So this sort of censorship via the state in Africa and in the United States of America has been going on for a long time. We know that. So we'll just, to be fair, we'll take a look at just a little bit of what's been going on in the United States. The U.S. Supreme Court found the First Amendment freedom of speech does not apply to obscenity. Those are bad words, which can therefore be censored. While some forms of hate speech are legal, so long as they do not turn to action or incite others to commit illegal acts, more severe forms have led to people or groups like the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan being denied marching permits, or the hateful Westboro Baptist Church being sued, although the initial adverse ruling against the latter was overturned on appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court in Snyder v. Phelps. As you can see on this page, there's all kinds of history in the United States of things being turned off. Social media. During World War II, you had to be very careful what you said. Loose lips sink ships. And so letters were opened and read to see if there's anything bad in them. Our prison system, there's no such thing as privacy. Your phone calls are listened to, your letters are read. Is this censorship or is this protection? Well, it all depends. What side of the bomb you're on. The Office of Censorship, the U.S. War Service, the Office of Censorship, an emergency wartime agency, heavily censored reporting during World War II. During World War I, and to a greater extent during World War II, war correspondents accompanied military forces, and their reports were subject to advanced censorship to preserve military secrets. And we know FDR, no one reported about his affairs or that he was in a wheelchair. Was the press doing their job, or was the press protecting the United States by not ratting out the president? The Truman administration, lots of lies. Eisenhower, Nixon, Clinton. The Online Child Protection Act, passed in 1998, was criticized and legally challenged by Civil Liberties Group, claiming it reduces the internet to what is fit for a 6-year-old. Through legal actions and permanent injunction, the act never took effect. So there are people who, at least for now, are trying to stand up. United States press freedom ranking: high, less free, low, more free. And these are the years where we have been having a free press that is not censored by the government. The Bush administration, Obama, Trump. Battles over censorship and freedom of speech occurred frequently during Trump's presidency. He only wanted you to know what he wanted you to know, not what you needed to know. And as we know, really very interesting, and the ACLU is on Trump's side with this. On January 8, 2 days after the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol by far-right extremists, the official Twitter account of Donald Trump was permanently banned by Twitter. I agree with the ban because he violated everything that they stand for, but I also understand that some people think it is a violation of freedom of speech. I don't think that hate speech needs to be protected. Twitter, in an official statement, announced the reason, saying after close review of recent tweets from the @RealDonaldTrump account and the context around them, specifically how they are being received and interpreted on and off Twitter, we have permanently suspended the account due to the risk of further incitement of violence. Well, it's hard to argue with that, knowing what happened. In art, we censor art. Robert Mapplethorpe, I don't know, remember him? Widely publicized case prosecuting alleged obscenity occurred in 1990 when the Contemporary Art Center in Cincinnati agreed to hold an art exhibition featuring the work of photographer Robert Mapplethorpe. His work included several artistic nude photographs of males and was deemed offensive by some for this reason, resulting in the prosecution of the CAC art director, Dennis Berry, who was also later acquitted. Then they have been broadcasting Howard Stern, George Carlin, the 7 words you cannot say on television that I believed he uttered on HBO, which I guess wasn't really considered television at the time, because he got away with it. So we know we have a rich and deep sense of censoring other people. The FBI can take down your website if they don't like what you're saying, and they can take care of you. WikiLeaks. Dedicated to the truth? Or are they the enemy of the state? Well, that's going to be interesting. A spokesman for Columbia University in the city of New York confirmed on December 4th that its Office of Career Services sent an email warning students at Columbia School of International and Public Affairs to refrain from accessing the WikiLeaks cables and discussing this subject on the grounds that discourse about the documents would call into question your ability to deal with confidential information. That directive was quickly retracted the following day. It's always a battle between what's right and what the government wants you to know. And it's usually the government doing the censoring on behalf of the military, religious groups. So now we move to the ACLU on this topic of specifically online censorship in the States, which is a whole new bag of kittens. The online censorship sort of reflects what we just discussed about Africa being the #1 social media censor in the emerging world. In a sweeping victory for free speech, rights, and cyberspace. I don't know who calls the internet cyberspace, but I guess the ACLU does. The Supreme Court struck down the Communications Decency Act. In Reno versus ACLU in June of '97, the court granted the highest level of First Amendment protection to the internet, and cyber activists are still dancing in the streets. I don't know what a cyber activist is. I guess that's a person on Twitter. Your Facebook friend. But is cyberspace really safe from the censors? I would love to know when this was written, because this is very old terminology. Well, here we go. Maybe 1998, I don't know. Here are some examples of state bills in the United States, thank you for following, that are censoring, still to this day. Assembly Bill 1793 requires all public libraries that receive state funds to adopt a policy to prohibit minors from accessing harmful matter on internet terminals at the library. Even in New York, criminalizes engaging in sexually explicit conversation with minors over the internet. Not a terrible thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I guess some people think that's censorship. If someone wants to do it, let them do it. I don't believe that. But I'm not the ACLU. State laws that regulate speech on the internet. California requires schools to adopt an internet access policy regarding student access to sites with material that is harmful to minors. I don't know how people are deciding this. Who is the arbiter of harm to minors? Not exactly clear. The good old New York, criminalizing the transmission of indecent materials to minors, overturned in ALA versus Pataki. I think, again, indecent, very difficult to determine. Who is determining this? Indecency is a social moray, and I'm not sure if the government even knows how to define it. As the court recognized when striking down the New York censorship law in ALA versus Pataki, the former governor of New York, the internet is much like the railroad system because it is used to transport speech instead of coal and information instead of oil all over the country. The New York law, like similar state laws, violated the Commerce Clause because it would have required a Texan who posts a web page or a message to abide by New York standards, even if no one from New York ever saw the page or read the post. Absolutely right. That makes complete sense. The internet is a free-for-all. And that's the danger in it. These governments do not want people freely talking about ideas or sending files. They don't want communication encrypted. They want access to what you're thinking and doing so they can keep an eye on you in their best interest, when it's all really about just control. They want to stay in power, and they can't stay in power unless they know what you're thinking and doing and how you're voting. And we're seeing that play out all across America. And it's not going to be a very good end. It's probably going to end in some sort of violence. ACLU victories in the courts. ALA versus Pataki. In a precedent-setting opinion, the court struck down a New York State online indecency law because it violated the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, which prohibits states from regulating speech wholly outside their own borders and from imposing inconsistent state burdens on speakers. The ACLU versus Miller. This case struck down on a free speech grounds that a Georgia state law that made it a crime to, 1, communicate anonymously, or using a pseudonym on the internet. Well, I don't like pseudonyms, but I'm not the law writer. 2, to create links to websites that use trade names, trademarks, or logos. That one, I think people should be who they are. I've always said people should have a license to be on the internet. And I get screamed down, and I'm sort of kidding. I also think people should have licenses to become parents. Some kind of vetting process. Apply and then get approved. Oh, no, that's too much government. Okay. But look what we have. We have people who don't know anything who are in charge of people's lives. And they have no inspiration to get further training. Urofsky versus Allen. This case struck down a Virginia law that forbade state employees, including university professors, from using state-owned computers to access access or transmit sexually explicit material. Now, on the surface, that seems, why would you outlaw that? But some people are doing research on pornography, on child abuse, on rape and mutilation, so they have to transfer those ideas over the internet. And maybe they're ugly and arresting photographs. And who is to determine what you can send and not send over the internet? Well, if it's explicit porn, child porn, you're in trouble. But if you're trying to send autopsy photographs that are graphic, it's part of doing business. So these are some of the concerns that are going on in our world today, this idea of censorship and freedom. And we think we have it, but we don't really. And tomorrow we're going to talk about a couple of other interesting ideas that we didn't quite get to today, but we will get them tomorrow. I thank you for joining me today. It's been a wonderful stream. If you have any ideas or thoughts, do not hesitate to let me know here in chat. You can email me, David, at boles.tv, BOLES.tv. You can find me on Twitter, at David Boles. Facebook, I'm just BOLES. On Instagram, I am Boles Books. And I thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget, this weekend, Jana Marie is back with her own talk show. Chat show. 11 a.m. Eastern, Saturday, Sunday. Her new show is called Jana Sweeney, Ask a Deaf Person. So if you have questions about deafness or disability training or finding jobs for disabled people, teaching sign language, learning sign language, she has all the information on that because that's what she does all day, every day, as part of her job and part of her love for living. So until tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern, I thank you so much. Be in touch. I will see you soon.